Just really quick, I want to give just a really quick example of the last vid in sound sculpting with this tool. This is just a really simple example, and what the deal is that, okay, I've got a guitar tone, right? It's just a clean guitar tone. And if I put this clean guitar tone on there, and I don't put any type of static distortion on it or this wave shaping, because it works out of the same thing. I'm trying to understand that whenever you change a sinusoid, that it's looked at as distortion. So don't get confused by that. If you look at any complex waveform that you looked at, that's like a sum of a bunch of tracks or something, that's basically what it looks like, a bunch of distorted sine wave. I mean, I know that sounds simply stupid, but it basically all it is. So anything that's adding distortion or changing harmonic content it's a distortion effect, which basically works out to anything that's messing with harmonic content. But here's an example. An example I'll give you is I've got this guitar and this distortion that's really cool. And it can be anything. This is a very simple understanding because almost anybody can understand you overdrive on a guitar amp or on a guitar. So, but it's like really crunchy and just doesn't sound right. I've tried, I don't know how many different, amplifiers and, sims and all kinds of stuff, and it just never sound right. And so I need to smooth it out some. And basically one of the understandings of that is here's a simple clean guitar tone. And if you look at the harmonic content going across here, that it's a fairly clean guitar tone. It has a little teeny bit of distortion in it, not much, but just a little teeny bit of distortion. I mean, but it's fairly clean. Now, I put this first one on here, and if you remember from the last video, the first one that I showed you that was working with the slopes and degrees, I really brought that cap down on it to it was really flat, and I scooted the actual slope of it back more towards a square tooth wave, but not like a square tooth wave straight up and down. And I messed around with it for a while, and I'm not going to say that I spent, 3 weeks trying to put this together to show you the demonstration, just an example. And then I turned it on. Well, basically when I go to turn it on is that when I turn it on, the harmonic content all of a sudden got fairly rich, and it's not distorted like super crunchy, like it's just falling apart distortion. It just adds this smoothness, but you can see all the added harmonic content going across there. It doesn't take much to see that it's very subtle, but it adds a lot to it. And if I turn it off, you can see all that harmonic content just drops off. And so you can see what's happening there. You probably can't hear it as well, but you can certainly see it on the spectrogram. And then I'll turn it back on and added some more harmonic content with that first parameter I was showing you. And it's very simple. And then next what I did is I went over and assigned a triangle to try to sharpen those slopes a little bit, to give it that little more smoother sound, more like strings or something. I added some of that. And now, if you look at it, all the way across the spectrum, all that harmonic content, it's boosted it and added this smooth content. And on both of them, I don't have them mixed in very much, but now it's got this nice ringing, smooth. I mean, it's almost like the guitar plucks, and then it's almost like a string section took over. It's like it changed from a guitar to a violin, the trailing distortion that's falling off of it. Does that make sense? But it's not this harsh stuff. Does that make sense? And so the understanding of that is that to try to understand that it's for shaping it, you've got this amp or something, and this is a simple example that goes for anything, but this is kind of an extreme example, but the distortion doesn't sound right. Now you put this stuff at the front of it on your clean guitar before it goes into the amp, or on the end of it, to try to figure out which way it's going to try to smooth it out, so that you've got a nice sound. Or you can sculpt it. Sometimes it's just you want to, have it just raunchy as heck. But most of the time, this is really silky sound sculpting, right? I mean, we're dealing with, we want to deal with just a few overtones up in here that just got a nice scope and nice flow, and there's not all this stuff going on too much to where there's a lot of humps, to where there's no continuity in the drop and the slope and the harmonic content. Does that make sense? And you can see that in most, if you look at anything that shows harmonic content that most of the time that those waveforms will have, you know, a fairly stable drop in decibel range between the harmonic components. And sometimes when you're going along and you put some distortion on, and all of a sudden you get these humps down there at the end, you know, these humps all across your distortion because of the way it's distorting it, and you know it's not doing a good job, and you get frustrated because it's not creating a smooth distortion and making a nice harmonic content going across there. But anyway, I wanted to give you a simple example of that to see, and you basically just got to work with it. And like I said, this kind of sound sculpting is neat. That means you've got a vocalist and the microphone doesn't sound quite right, and you need to add some harmonic content. You don't want to go spend $50,000 on a nice Newman microphone that they just came out with that you can just sacrifice one of your children for. You know, and it's like you can do that with this. Does that make sense? With this and a little bit of saturation that we've talked about a little bit that I'll make another video on, you've got yourself a $50,000 microphone to add harmonic content and to make it sound like the guys that got, you know, $5 million studio. Does that make sense? And I know that might sound real simple by looking at this, but that's what it does, and that's the concept of it. Because those kind of things, and then working with the circuitry with clipping distortion that's overdriving the circuit, and a triangle distortion leaning towards saw distortion that's from overdriving the circuit, and then different types of noises that are inherent in the circuitry as they build it. And I don't want to get into that too much to make it sound so complicated like you're going to have to go to school for 10 years, learn math to make that work. It's just understand the concept of what's happening, and that's what this kind of stuff does. But it's very neat sculpting. This isn't some, if you're expecting the waveform to go ooh all over the place, it's the subtleness that makes the actual, that it might be 1% in the mix. You got 2% of it in there that just added a little bit more harmonic content, that just smoothed it out or roughed it up a little bit, that just, you know, made it. You know, does that make sense? And that's an invaluable tool if you're that type of mixer that you're like, well, I need to work on that because, you know, I want my shit to sound good. Or this guy's going to give me a shitload of money and I want him to come back and see me, you know, and I don't have to go spend $50,000 on that microphone because I can figure out how to do it right here. Does that make sense? And some of that can get a little complex, but I wanted to give you a simple example to understand about the last video so that it's not like overwhelming and you're going, well, what the hell am I going to use that crap for? It ain't going to do nothing. Well, it's the subtleness and the very subtle changes that it can make to your audio that make the difference between you just produced an album that's going to sell millions of albums and the other band going to come see you and everybody's going to see you rather than you never, you know, always coming out sounding half-assed like crap. That kind of stuff is what makes the difference. Peace, hope, love.